Have you ever felt like you believe in God, but your heart still feels uneasy? Sometimes anxiety doesn't look like fear, it looks like never fully relaxing. You can be faithful, prayerful, and still quietly anxious, and that doesn't mean something is wrong with you. For many women, anxiety isn't loud. It doesn't always show up as panic or worry. Sometimes it looks like the quiet pressures of money concerns, wondering if there will be enough, if you're doing enough, if one unexpected expense could change everything. Sometimes it looks like the weight of family responsibilities, being needed by everyone, holding things together, and never fully switching off. For women of faith, anxiety can hide even deeper. It can look like the fear of getting something wrong, making a wrong decision, disappointing God, or failing the people who depend on you. It can show up as moral perfectionism, the pressure to always be patient, gracious, strong, and faithful, even when you feel tired inside. And sometimes anxiety takes the shape of loneliness, the quiet ache of wanting companionship, wondering if you'll ever have a partner, if friendships will last, or if you'll have to walk through life carrying things alone. Then there's pressure of self-image, how you look, how you're perceived, how well you're holding it together. The fear of being misunderstood, of standing alone in your own convictions. There's also the fear of being seen but not being truly known. So you pray, you keep going, and you tell yourself you should be grateful. But underneath it all, your heart never fully rests. And if this sounds familiar, it doesn't mean you lack faith. It doesn't mean you're failing. It only means you're human, and your heart is asking for courage and not condemnation. There's a story in the Bible that often comes to my mind whenever I think about quiet anxiety. It is found in 1 Kings chapter 17. At that time, there was a severe famine in the land. Food was scarce. Resources were disappearing. The story introduces us to a widow, a woman raising her child alone in the middle of this famine. She had already lost her husband, and now she's facing the fear of losing her sense of safety. She tells the prophet that all she has left is a small jar of oil and a little flour, just enough for one meal. She wasn't crying out. She wasn't asking for a miracle. She was simply explaining her reality. And that is what makes her story so human. Because this is what anxiety often looks like. Not panic, but resignation. Not fear, but exhaustion. The weight of responsibility. The quiet calculation of how long things can last. The ache of knowing a child is depending on you when your resources are running out. The Bible never used the word anxiety here, but any woman who has ever carried responsibility like that can feel it in her bones. Then there's another woman I often think about from a more recent history. Her name was Elizabeth Elliot. She lived in the 20th century and was a well-known Christian writer and speaker. Elizabeth was deeply in love and newly married when her husband was killed while serving as a missionary. In a moment, her future changed. She became a widow with a 10-month-old daughter. She wrote honestly about faith, grief, and learning to trust God when the life she imagined was suddenly gone. Her anxiety wasn't just about finances. It was about loss, about relationships, about trusting again after love had been taken away from her, about walking forward when safety no longer felt certain. Story of two women, two very different lives, and two very real struggles. One faced anxiety from lack and responsibility, the other from love, loss, and fear of the future. And beneath both stories is the same quiet question: will I be okay? It is a question I know personally. As a single mom, there are days when the responsibility feels heavy, not just financially, but emotionally and mentally. Being the one who makes the decisions, the one who carries the expectations, the one who has to stay steady for her children, there's always that quiet fear of failing, of not doing enough, of getting something wrong. This kind of anxiety doesn't shout, it hums quietly in the background. And yet, this is exactly where faith meets us. Not when fear disappears, but right in the middle of it. If this message is resonating with you, I invite you to pause for a moment. Like this video. Share it with someone who might need it. Leave a comment if it spoke to your heart, and subscribe to this channel for more faith-centered encouragement. If you're longing for a quiet space to reflect and to reconnect with God in the middle of anxiety and pressure, I have created a free 3-day devotional called Quiet Strength. It's designed to help you slow down and find peace, and gently anchor your heart to faith through short daily reflections and scripture. You can download it using the link in the description below. It is there to support you and not to overwhelm you. And may the Lord bless your heart as you go through that process. Now back to the message. What the stories show us is something very important. Anxiety is not always a sign of weak faith. Sometimes it is a sign that we are carrying more than we are meant to carry alone. The widow in the story, for example, wasn't anxious because she didn't trust God. She was anxious because she was responsible for a child in a season of lack. Elizabeth Elliot, as well, wasn't anxious because she lacked belief. She was anxious because love had been taken from her and the future no longer felt safe. Many of us feel anxious not because we don't pray, but because we are human, and life typically asks a whole lot of us. There is a verse in Psalms that says, "When anxiety was great within me, God's comfort brought me joy." I love this verse because it doesn't deny anxiety, it actually names it. And that reminds us that God meets us there. Exactly where fear and anxiety lives, He meets us there. Faith does not mean pretending fear does not exist. It means allowing God to meet us where fear already lives. A brave heart is not a fearless heart. A brave heart is one that stays open, that brings fear into the light instead of hiding it behind strength or silence. In scripture, courage is rarely loud. Rarely. It is often quiet obedience. Daily trust. Choosing to keep going even when certainty is gone. When anxiety hums beneath the surface, faith becomes our inner compass. Not by giving us all the answers, but by reminding us of who we are anchored to. This is where peace actually begins. Not when circumstances change, but when our hearts learn they don't have to face tomorrow alone. In the next video, we will talk about what it looks like to take brave, faith-filled steps forward. Not all at once, not perfectly, but gently, steadily, one step at a time. Until then, be kind to your heart. Your courage is already growing. And God bless you.